think it's still, if I'm correct, if I'm wrong, it's still a work in progress, but they've got most of it done. And you have a presentation you can share your screen with. Is that correct, Pat?
Sure. I know Scott, so I guess first of all, Pat Derrickton, Joint Fiscal Office. I know Scott printed out everything, but if you'd like for me to put it up on the screen, I can do that also.
Uh,
How is that?
So welcome, Pat. Thank you for being available. Pat's only available for half hour. I hope we can get through this in less than half an hour. And then we have a witness from the chamber that is on standby. We're just juggling witnesses here this morning, people's schedules. So as you see in the handout, this is not an insignificant bill, $100 million in this bill. Okay.
All set?
We're live, right?
We're live.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the delay with the Joint Rules Committee. I have such a powerful committee that we dominate the Joint Rules Committee. So let's go with Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So I guess what you all have in front of you and what I've prepared is a summary of appropriations and some expenses that are in your bill H-159, and everything here should be current as of draft 7.2, I believe it is. And so I guess just for starters, on this first tab, you can see overall it's 10.2 million in the bill in general fund, and then 90.7 million in ARPA dollars, which overall is 100.9 million. We did.
Question in the opening sentence.
I'm so sorry, but we've been clear from the beginning that the brownfields are not ARPA money. They've always been general fund money, one-time money on our list from Jane. Michael and I have always been talked about them as general fund or one-time money. So I don't know how they started to show up as ARPA money.
Probably
$6 million. It's been very clear from the beginning that's not ARPA money.
Okay. Well, I will make a note. I will make a note.
No, how is it written in the bill this one?
Yeah, that needs to change. If that was a mistake, that's a mistake. We can change it. But our discussions have always been, and our understanding was from the beginning that it couldn't be ARPA money.
That just went by the bill. So we got to check and make sure we're right.
Yeah, all the appropriations are in the last section, as I recall. Okay, I'll find it, but it is.
Okay, well, we'll take Senator Clarkson is correct. If in the bill it says it's ARPA money, we will change that to general fund.
I don't see it, which is weird.
I know you always have trouble finding it.
I know.
Then I'll find it. We are nowhere yet. We just got started.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us, but I do see this, and I know I just am flagging it, Pat, because it needs to be clarified.
Yep. Noted. So yeah, as it's written in draft 7.2, which should be the most current version, it's currently listed as ARPA dollars, but as we move forward, we'll change that.
Because I don't see it here on pages 68 and 69, which is where the appropriations are.
No, it's buried somewhere else.
Okay, we'll find it as we go through. Sorry, Pat, I just wanted to flag it from the start.
No worries.
Okay, I'm finding it.
Okay. And so there are a few, 3 instances where there are per diems associated with study and task force committees. And so we've estimated those costs on a separate tab. So I guess moving into the line by line here, there's 9 instances in the bill of either appropriations or reallocations. I know you've all talked about every one of these programs quite a lot, so I can just run through what those appropriations are and as they're written in the bill, the current draft, where they're being sourced from. So for the new and relocating employee incentives, there's $6 million. 5 of that is in one-time funding, and then 1 is in base funding. The dollars that are going to the Department of Tourism and Marketing, there's 4.2 million overall from the general fund, and it's split into 2 different categories. And then still going, the capital investment grant program, there's $40 million. There's a question.
Pat, can you hear me?
Yes.
So on tourism marketing, how do you reflect that if, as we expect, the appropriations committee is going to take this out as it goes to them and hold it for the big bill? How does it get reflected? I mean, we talked about, this is a pilot program and that we wanted to fund it for 2 years versus 3 years. So does it get reflected that it gets all appropriated in FY 2003, and then if they have, and they're expected to carry it forward into 2004 and not come back and ask us for any more money? What happens if they spend it all in 2003? If it says, do we need like qualifying language to make sure that it's clear that it's a 2-year commitment?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a definitive answer on that, but it's something I can take back to Stephanie to get her opinion on. I know in the bill now, there is language stating that it is to be spent over the course of 2 years, but with regards to how that shows up in determining year to year how much is showing up in the bill, I'm not quite sure I have an answer for you on that right now.
Yeah, when you get that answer, your question that has come up, I had a meeting with Stephanie and you yesterday. I didn't ask the question then, but we're getting pressure from down the hall in terms of how much we're spending, and what we don't want to happen is this to be reflected as 4.2 million, which is the bottom line, FY 23, thereby tying our hands for other expenditures when we know only half of that's going to be spent in the first year. So that's the issue. And I've seen it like it's both ways. Like I know the now this program, the Better Places program, was $5 million in one-time funding, but everybody knew that was over 3 years. But I don't think the way it was accounted for in truing up the budget or balancing the budget had it as over 5 years. They put the whole $5 million. I could be wrong, but that's what I thought happened because it was appropriated last year. They took it all out of last year's budget. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's a good point, and that's why I'm not quite sure I have a definitive answer right now, but I will make a note of that, and I'll get back to you this morning on that. So if there aren't any other questions about that, for the capital investment grant program, it's currently written in that there's $40 million in ARPA funds, 20 million in ARPA funds for the VITA short-term forgivable loan program.
Excuse me, Pat.
Yes.
The capital investment money is not FY 22.
Oh, excuse me. That's a typo here.
Thanks. VITA, yes, because we have 26 million sitting at ACCD. So we still have 6 million there that is cash available, but the CIP is FY 23.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. And so the first instance of an appropriation that you have in the bill right now where I want to raise something for you to consider is in this COVID-19 related paid leave grant program. So we have an estimate from Joyce that this program incur about $16.5 million in costs. And it's being sourced from ARPA. The one thing that's not in the bill that you might consider adding is just, just some language saying that, once the funds run out, either there's some kind of report back or the program ends, just to avoid, any instance, to protect yourself in an instance where you're oversubscribed, and that you don't have enough funds to actually meet all of the demand. Because, like I said, this is an estimate. The pandemic is incredibly difficult to predict. So it's just something to consider for this section. The next section has to do with the paid family and medical leave task force. There's a couple of things I want to note here. So currently there is a $200,000 ARPA appropriation. So the rule for, my understanding is on the rule for, allocating ARPA funds is that they have to go towards either setting up or providing eligible benefits, that fall under the sort of guise of that final rule. And the fact that this is a task force, so it's studying what the setup might be, and it's a little bit far removed from the language of the rule that states that it actually has to be for setup or providing the benefits. So there is a concern amongst our.
Can you check in with Damian Leonard, because I think the rule and the interpretation really has been very specific. That says I think somewhere I read that you could actually, as it applies to paid leave, you could actually use money to study the option. If there's something specific that we can give it that says, I had similar concerns, but I think they were allayed by the fact that there's something specific from the feds that said you absolutely can use this money to study the establishment of the paid family leave program. So if you can check with Damian, I think he has some articles, or maybe he can connect with some of the Physicians for Social Responsibility. I read something in there that specifically allows this.
Yeah, so I would defer. We have been in touch with Damian and Legislative Council on this point, and I, in general, would defer to their opinion on this matter. But I don't want to speak for them, but I do think that we are, in agreement that this is a bit removed from actually setting up and administering a benefits program, and so there is probably a greater level of risk in terms of designating it as ARPA and how that relates to its eligibility. So that might be something that you just want to think a little bit more about, and maybe Damian, since we last talked, has some additional information, but I just want, for now, I want to flag that for you to think about. And so also contained within this section, so it lumps this $200,000 appropriation to include both per diems for the task force and dollars for paying expenses related to modeling and auditing. It has that as a single line item, but you might want to consider just breaking out the two, so they don't have sort of competing interests on the same pot of money. And we do have an estimate on what those per diem costs would be. They're currently written as being a part of that 200,000, so it would just be a matter of.
Did you have the per diem cost be 14,000? Is that right?
So that is yes. Why don't we jump over to this per diem tab here? So for the paid family leave task force, that particular line item would be about $8,100. And there's sorry, go ahead.
In that we, on this section, we say $8,100 for the task force and the balance for modeling.
Right. Just, I mean, this is a hypothetical, but you could get into a scenario where you're coming up to the last task force meeting and you've already spent the balance on, the modeling and auditing expenses. So it's just a sort of, self-protection, I guess.
Take that under advisement. Okay.
So I think that was my last point on the paid leave task force. Up next, in section 14D through J, that is the unemployment insurance supplemental benefits. That's another $8 million in ARPA funds. And, similar to the paid leave grant program, it could be a good idea to insert some language just stating that if the program runs out of money before the end of its period, you might want to add that it would cease to, go on. The program ends when it runs out of money, and for a similar reason. So we have this estimate from Joyce, but it's sort of based on predicting what unemployment is going to look like, which is historically very difficult thing to do. So it's just another instance of saying when the funds for the program run out, the program ends. And so I know Senator Clarkson, you already brought up this point about brownfields. It is listed in this table as $6 million in ARPA.
No, it's not. That's our oversight in the bill. It's always been general fund.
Yep. And so we'll make that change, and I guess that change should also be made in the language of the bill. One thing I do want to raise here is I know that in the constellation of budgets and how much you have and things like that, you're trying to look at ways to sort of fit under certain. You're trying to make sure you have enough money for everything in the bill, right? So there is a brownfields program in the big bill H740 that is for the same program at the same dollar point. So if there's any areas you're looking at where you might want to save a little money on your bottom line, this could be an area because there is appropriated funds in another bill for the same amount for this program. And then the last piece, sorry.
I've lost you on that. Are you trying to say that this is duplicative of some other bill that's out there?
Yeah, in the House though.
It's in the House still?
Well, it's part of the big bill. Sorry.
A lot of this stuff that I'm suggesting will make it into the big bill. I mean, the way things work here in the Senate is we sort of expect that these things stay our priority to be put into the appropriation in some form, and then the appropriation committee deals with it generally in the big bill, so they would reconcile. Right. Yeah.
Understood. Just wanted to point out that it does exist in another form elsewhere.
That's the exact same language.
That's my understanding, yes.
Including the limitations of $200,000 grants per parcel.
I think that would be the only place where it differs. Yeah, I don't. That language, from what I read, is not included.
That's not included. That's without the limitations. So right now, I guess the revitalization fund has a limitation, and our language removes that limitation. And I'm having trouble a while back in terms of our discussion of brownfields. Why we remove that limitation or whose request?
Well,
does anybody?
Yeah, it's Tom Kennedy, and that was their request. Is it ever? Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay.
We can double check, but we're at a point where we're trying to vote this out, and that can be reconciled in appropriation. And if we're lucky, that'll mean $6 more million, and we need 15, so 12 would be great.
Okay, we can't take that out.
I would keep it, I'd keep it and let the appropriations reconcile it. And it's FY 23 again, it's not FY 22.
So the last piece in here, it's not a new appropriation, but it there is.
Senator Clarkson raised the point. So I take it that our bill has money going out quicker than July 1st. What is your understanding of joint fiscal, what the administration was asking for?
I am not sure I have the answer to that question. And are you asking in terms of when they are asking for the funds to be allocated, like which fiscal year?
Yes.
Yeah. So my understanding is that it's for 2022.
They asked for 2022, and did the House do 20?
I don't have the answer to that. I'm not
Okay.
sure what the House did on
You
that.
check on that. We're hearing from ACCD that they're asking for this in 23.
Yeah.
So just check on that and get back to us as to whether what the House did in that area. Senator Clarkson.
I think originally there was some hope we could get this in the budget adjustment. And so I believe that's why this is a lingering thing, but it's a mistake in the bill too. I mean, I now that we are where we are, obviously 22 is gone, except for the 26 million that ACCD has for economic development. So we could add 6 million that ACCD has already, but I think that was not the intention of this money.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, well, we
I
can,
mean, I think that we were trying to advance it, even if it's a couple of months. When the governor had asked for it, if he had asked for it in 22, I didn't see any reason why we shouldn't give it sooner. If it went through this bill, might pass in a couple of weeks. If it went through the budget, it'd probably be early May, and it could be effective upon passage. Maybe those 2 months help.
Yeah.
So
every month helps on records.
we have to sort that.
Yep. So date and.
So if you can find out, we'll also get information from ACCD whether they care one way or another at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I can get that to you.
It may make a difference to center appropriations. How
Right.
about 22 versus 23. So.
Yeah, understood. And so are we good?
Yep. Okay.
So the last piece here was just reallocation of the funds that are appropriated to ACCD. 485 of that may be used through the Better Places program. So this is not a new appropriation, but I just wanted to include it in the summary, just as a note that there's a stipulation being, or a clause being included on these funds in the bill.
That raises a comparable question for me. We've been told that we're utilizing, in terms of the bottom line here, we have some problems there, but at least we have from the ERG program $26 million that's not being used at this point. Maybe there's still a trickle of applicants, but is that the way you say a reallocation here of the 485? Why wouldn't that also be true for 26 million?
That is a good question, and honestly, something I probably have to ask Stephanie about why we're designating that way.
Language in the bill. I mean, I don't care which program gets that $26 million, but we want that to be in this bill as a reallocation, as opposed to having that money sit down out there as a program for recovery grants, and then having the VITA program, another $20 million for essentially recovery grants. So the idea was to move that money over to large part to VITA, and the other $6 million can go wherever. But
right,
it needed to be as a reallocation as opposed to the new appropriations.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely correct. This is a reallocation. Yeah.
Okay. Let's,
So-
I understand the task on this task forces.
Yes, there is, I just wanted to touch on the other per diem expenses that we had estimated. So we already talked about the paid family leave task force, and that's already included in that $200,000 appropriation for that. But there are two other, there's another task force, another study committee, which it's referenced that they will be provided per diems in the bill, but there's no specific appropriation for them. So these are the our estimates of what those per diems would end up costing. So for the Film Commission Task Force, there's 2 members of the legislature, 1 member of the Arts Council, over 4 meetings, $2,300. And then there's 4 members of the Sports Betting Committee, and over 4 meetings, that would come out to about $3,600.
Senator Clarkson has a question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Patrick, where do you get paying for somebody who's salaried at the Arts Council? I don't understand that. We've never done that before. Legislators. I mean, they're paid for their job, so we're not. I don't get that.
Understood. This was an estimate that was provided to me by choice. So based on, what the particulars are of that, I'm not sure what the history is on providing something like that with a per diem, but
I thought we made reference to the per diem statute in our bill, and I think that
It did in the legislature.
well, but there's also a provision, I think, about non-legislative people, and it says.
Well, that's the
they can
question,
get-
is the
they can-
person who heads the Arts Council, is she a full-time employee of the state?
Well, it's a quasi. It's a quasi.
No, but my understanding is that statute, we'll check this, but is that it says for people who are not legislative people, who are not otherwise compensated by their employer, they get a per diem of a similar amount.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to understand.
She's compensated, so that's a question mark for me. I don't get that.
It's a small item, but could you double check
yes, absolutely.
would play out as the way we wrote it?
I'll look it up.
Maybe to make it clearer. We don't want to double pay somebody for getting paid. Just so in case you haven't heard, there seems to be, I don't know how serious it is, but down the hall of appropriations and maybe the finance, they're interested in being more aggressive on sports betting than we have been. So I just, I don't know how I feel about that. The only thing, we'll wait to see how it plays out. I mean, we could have the administration give them a lot of authority to use the regulatory system in this law. How the House is going to go and forth. People are hungry for money, and the range is up to like $10 million in year 2 now.
I guess the question is, so in the near term, could, even if we were to act something, could it be done in time to just affect the revenues of the next year?
Yeah, I mean, you're all, I can't
I
see.
think that's a good question.
Though there were stories out of the New York Times and otherwhere, when New York launched this program, it was probably recently. The amount of money that they gathered in the first week was astronomical. So, I mean, if this thing got started in February or April, I mean, it may not be that much, but it could be. I agree with you, though. That's another question. The real is how it affects this year's budget. Okay, thank you, Pat. If you can get back to us, maybe send us a memo on these points in the course of today, if you could. And if we need you back, we'll have you back. But there's some cleanup. I think we need to do.
Yeah, we flagged the brownfields language one and the question about 22.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick.
We're going to move to Chris Kessler because he's been patiently waiting since 9 o'clock. And Chris, I understand that you've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, is that correct? In terms
Correct.
of this bill. And so you're, are you, well, I'll let you have the floor go in any direction you want, but I guess are you here for both the VITA program and the capital investment program, or just for the VITA program?
Yes, and also representing hospitality. I actually testified with the House Appropriations Committee just over a year ago for in support of Act 9. So really, now that the funds are being redistributed, then I wanted to discuss the situation again with you. So thanks for inviting me into this important discussion. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Kessler, founder of Black Flannel Brewing Company. We're a 15-barrel brewery and full-service restaurant located in Essex. Last month, our executive chef was named a semifinalist in the 2022 James Beard Awards. We are the only brewery in the United States with this distinction.
That's
I'm
fabulous.
also thank you. We were very excited. So
When did you open? Because I lived in Essex forever.
July of
I'm
20.
going to an opening or something.
Yeah, July 2022 or July 2020 is when we opened.
Okay, yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Great. I'm also co-founder and partner of Black Flannel Distilling Company, which is located in the same footprint as the brewery and restaurant. We are the first and only brewery distillery combination in the state. So today I'm here to tell you the story of new Vermont businesses that opened during the pandemic and to advocate for less restrictions with higher maximum allowable awards, removal of the January 2020 date as recommended by VITA, and letting the program administrators do their jobs without being handcuffed so this money has the highest potential return on investment for the state. In 2017, we began planning the planning required to open the businesses. And in 2018, we decided on the location, the Essex Experience, which is formerly the Essex Outlets. We created a plan to launch a brewery and full service restaurant and a distillery all in one location that would be a one-of-a-kind experience and a destination for travel and tourism. To open, we invested our own funds, secured $800,000 in private investment, and received $2.1 million in loans split between VITA and Vermont Federal Credit Union. Our planned startup costs were $3.15 million. We took on additional debt right away as those costs ballooned to $3.3 million so we could add previously unplanned outdoor spaces. Black Flannel delivers a unique on-location experience, so we've had to pivot a great deal in order to adjust to opening safely and successfully during the pandemic. Additionally, in 2020, out of necessity, I started a beer distribution company to sell Black Flannel beer to retailers in response to restricted brewery traffic that was directly impacted by state-imposed but necessary COVID 50% occupancy restrictions. We hired our first employee in January of 2019, and construction began in November of 2019, with plans to open by May of 2020. By the time the pandemic shut things down, we were employing 7 people full-time. In June of 2020, the state allowed 50% capacity for restaurants, so we were able to hire and train an additional 33 employees and opened on July 1st, 2020 at a 50% capacity. We opened with 40 employees who have since earned an average wage of $25 per hour. We understand and agree that restrictions were necessary for public health, and we know that this committee realizes the importance of delivering much needed economic relief directly to small businesses that need the most help. But because we opened our doors in the middle of 2020, Black Flannel fell through the cracks for most COVID financial relief programs. When PPP first opened early in the second quarter of 2020, we were able to obtain a very small amount based on the 7 employees that we had at the time. We were also able to obtain a $7,000 idle advance grant, equating to $1,000 per employee. Other than that, we had not qualified for any other relief funding, not even idle loans, until the ACCD Bridge Grant Program last year. Lack of qualifying for relief programs was due to the requirement of showing economic injury between 2019 and 2020. Though we were not generating revenue in 2019, we have clearly been significantly impacted by the pandemic. We also did not qualify for the second round of PPP because of new restrictions and requirements put on the program at the federal level. Then came the federal SBA's.
Say that, why did you not qualify for the?
Because PPP's second round put a requirement that you had to show a decrease in revenue in one quarter between 2019 and 2020, and we couldn't do that because we didn't generate revenue in 2019.
Right.
Yep.
So I hope you don't mind if I
No.
interrupt. can go because you have a good story to tell. You, you know, one of the, I guess, arguments for limiting it to businesses that were operational prior to 2000, I can't remember the date, January 2020, is it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Is because saying that if people went into this with their eyes open, that they were facing a pandemic, you know, should we then be providing relief? It sounds to me like you had a lot of previous work.
We did, yeah. We started planning in 2017, did all the fundraising, we started construction. So we'd already spent, you know, a couple $1 million going into 2020.
Why are you cut out of this by this date? Well, you weren't operational. Is that the
Correct. Yeah, we were operating in that we had employees. We had hired 7 employees to help start up and planning, and we didn't start generating revenue until we opened our doors. So we had to buy all the equipment. We had to do the engineering, work with construction companies. So we hired our head of brewing operations, our head of restaurant operations. We had a general manager. So the small group of us were the people who brought the vision to life.
So I'm just trying to understand this, and everybody
Sure.
to explain this. So it's not, the date is not whether you're operational, but whether you had income as of that date.
Correct. Right. So in order to show economic injury, they wanted SBA wanted to show tax returns 2019 and 2020, but because the economic injury was determined by your revenue. So if you were impacted by a loss of revenue between 2019 and 2020, then that was their justification for economic injury. We were able to open, we planned and opened safely, but we were significantly impacted by the 50% restriction. If we were able to open up at 100%, if there weren't a pandemic, then we have a 150 seat main room restaurant. We're limited to 65 seats plus employees, so 75 total. So it impacted the ability for us to generate the revenue based on our plan, but we still had a fairly robust expense structure. So the first 2 years we had a fairly substantial loss. But now that things are starting to open up, we're seeing that turn around significantly. So we're, and part of the story, if you don't mind me continuing, I have more that I can tell you about how things progressed.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's okay. So next came the federal SBA RRF program. That's the Restaurant Revitalization Fund last May. Based on our tax returns financials, the SBA determined that we, Black Flannel Brewing and Distilling Companies, qualified for just over $1 million in RRF grants. If the program had been adequately funded by Congress, then we had received these grants, it would have effectively reversed the impact of the pandemic and given us a fighting chance at long-term survival, positioning us not only to grow, but to thrive. We, like 70% of Vermont businesses that qualified for RRF, received nothing.
Right. And that's because it ran out of money, right?
It ran out of money, yes. So I think they had 26 billion allocated, and the full need, if they had covered everything, was I think in the 80 billion range. So they had talked about immediately doing a restaurant revitalization RRF replenishment, somewhere between 40 and 60 billion, but it never happened. It never materialized. So Vermont's congressional, Senator Leahy, Sanders, and Representative Welsh were all fully in support in trying to push that through, but it never happened. So we're still holding out hope, but it's pretty much been washed away at this point, I think. So then came the ACCD Bridge Grants program last year. And unfortunately, the restrictive requirements that were built in through the language of Act 9 meant that we only had the possibility to receive a grant at a maximum of $150,000. This maximum was not enough, nearly enough for a company our size. Because only specific fixed expenses were allowed by the program, our actual award was just $82,000. This equates to just over 2 weeks of payroll for a company our size. which is a drop in the bucket, as you can imagine, for a company that has an annual expense structure that approaches $2 million. The undersubscription of this program wasn't because the need wasn't there. It's because the program was so restrictive, so it was ineffective in getting funds into the hands of those who needed it most at the level they needed it. The pandemic forced Black Flannel to take on a debt that we hadn't planned in order to open, and additional COVID-related expenses put us in the red by a few $100,000 from day one. We have been working to chip away slowly at operating debt and payables that accumulated during COVID, some of which we've been carrying for close to 2 years. Vendors have been very patient, but some have run out of patience. It will be very difficult to settle up without a level of assistance that other operators in our industry have received, hundreds of thousands, and in some cases, millions of dollars. The timing of our opening or who owns the companies should not have been a limiting factor when considering us for adequate level of relief funding. We are on track to achieve cash flow stability in the coming months, but we have a huge and potentially devastating handicap that we need to overcome. Black Flannel is a dynamic and well-managed company with a fantastic reputation for providing quality beer, food, spirits, and we are starting to gain national attention. We are poised to boost additional travel and tourism to the region. We were able to achieve 75% of our budgeted revenue goals operating under the state-imposed 50% capacity restrictions. This is a great sign that our original budget model was conservative, and the pandemic directly impacted the ability for us to achieve or exceed our original goals. My wife and I have personally exhausted our life savings to keep 40 Vermonters employed with high average wages, and during a pandemic, no less. But our personal resources have run out. Black Flannel is doing fine at the moment, but under the wrong circumstances, like another COVID variant, we could very well be forced to close our doors. Should we fail due to the financial impact we've experienced, not only will we be forced to close our doors, resulting in the loss of 40 high-paying Vermont jobs, who will then be a burden on the unemployment system, but we will personally forfeit all collateral, including our homes and other investments we've spent a lifetime to build. I believe this committee and the state have the best intentions to try to help struggling businesses like ours that have been directly impacted by the pandemic. The ability for the state to better distribute funds at the variable level of need that exists makes sense. Some needs are much higher than others. Artificially handcuffing program administrators with restrictions means that once again, available funds will not be put to their best use. Smaller awards, as in only up to 150,000, may mean they get to a higher number of companies, but an inadequate level of funding means some of us at a higher level of need may receive smaller awards and still be at risk to close. So as you design it, I advocate for reallocating as much of the $26 million from ACCD Bridge Grant Program to the VITA short-term forgivable loan program as possible. Impose less restrictions on allowable expenses with higher maximum allowable awards. I recommend what was originally being discussed, which is up to 500,000, and remove the January 2020 date requirement to support new Vermont businesses that opened during the pandemic, and let VITA program administrators do their jobs without being handcuffed, so this money has the highest potential return on investment for the state. Help Vermont businesses not only survive, but grow and thrive. Thank you for your time. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you have.
How are you doing now?
We're doing well. I think things are starting to open up. And, we're seeing January, we had one of our biggest weekends since we opened, which in January for a restaurant is pretty phenomenal. So, we're seeing signs of new life coming in and new people are hearing about us, and we're busy. We open 7 days a week. We had previously been open 5 days a week. We have been pretty lucky and fortunate so far to attract a lot of really top talent, and who in turn bring in employees for line cooks and service staff who are all really fantastic. So when we're firing on all cylinders, it really helps.
How long in advance do I need to call to get a reservation?
You can actually, if you go on a Wednesday, you look at, we should have Friday and Saturday reservations, but if you wait till Friday or Saturday, usually you're out of luck.
We may need to do a midweek celebration.
So I'm glad to hear that you overcame all this adversity. Have you looked at your budgets for the past year, and what do they shake out to for 2021? Are you going to have to pay any taxes?
No, because we had a loss, so that'll be okay. But I think for the coming year, we actually are putting together, what we're seeing so far, we have a budget for the year, and we're starting to see that we're exceeding that on a month-to-month basis as far as the revenue model goes. So that's a good sign.
So when you say you have losses in 2021, are you saying that's because you had substantial losses prior that you carried forward, or how did you do operationally?
Yeah, operationally, we were actually close to break even last year, but we went into the year. If you remember, in 2020 in November, things really shut down. So only one family per table were allowed, and so that essentially cut us to about a 25% operating capacity, and that happened between November of 2019 through February of 2020, and maybe March. So the first quarter of the year, it was a pretty substantial loss, but then we were able to turn that around for the final 3 quarters of the year. July, August, October were all we were able to achieve greater than break even, and in some cases much higher than break even. We had a good profit in some of those months. We also did benefit. I didn't mention before that there was a state arrearages program for energy for gas and electric. We had a few months outstanding at one point, and in the state that those grant programs took care of some of those months. So that was a nice assistance that we received.
So I guess I just wanted, do you have anybody else have any questions?
No, I'm impressed that Chris, did I really hear that you meant 75% of your revenue projections operating at 50% capacity?
We did, yes. Yep. And I think this year we're going to exceed that. Yep.
No, that's well managed. I'm impressed. But what I'm also hearing is it's taken a huge toll on your personal finances, that you basically floated this.
Oh yeah. I purchased an old church building near Five Corners, Essex in 2014, renovated it, and it's a commercial office space. And I had a lot of equity built into that. I refinanced it and put all the money into Black Flannel. So yeah, we're fully leveraged at this point.
Yeah, fully leveraged.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So Chris, nice to see you, and I have had the privilege of being at Black Flannel. It's amazing. It's a real community gem and resource, as well as really great food and beer. And I've been asking a lot of businesses, especially of your size, with the 150 and the 3 months versus 250 and some other amount of months, what for you is worth your time and investment? What would help on the scale that you need it to be helpful? Does 250 make it worth your time? Does the 6 months help? Whichever is what is a helpful number for you?
I think being as reducing the restrictions as as well as possible, I guess. For us, I think when we first learned about this program, we heard that it was going to be 500,000 maximum allowable based on your size and your operating, and Vita would look at your financials and the true needs. So I think there's going to be a lot of small businesses out there that are similar to us that opened in the pandemic. They're going to just need $15,000, $20,000. Some are going to need $80,000. And so that's part of the reason I think that the ACCD program was handcuffed, and it didn't was allowed up to 150, but it was so restrictive. It only allowed certain fixed expenses, and so if you allow for other operating expenses, payroll, we really didn't get much PPP. So if you allow for either PPP and or cost of goods, for example, these are the lifeblood of our businesses. So I think if you let Vita administer it up to 500K and with more allowable expenses involved, then I think that'll have much more impact. For us, certainly, I mean, any amount's going to be worthwhile. We're going to discuss that when the time comes, and even if it's just a small amount, any little bit's going to help. But what's going to make the most impact and put us in the best position moving forward to help ourselves grow, but also contribute to the state economy, is to have something at a higher level, like closer to 500K for the restaurant and a smaller amount for the distillery. It's a smaller operation, so.
That's helpful.
Thanks.
You know, we have probably a lot less specificity in this bill at this point than we've been talking about. There's some guidelines, there's a cap in here, but the overall purpose of this bill is in this bill, and it says is to support businesses experiencing continued working capital shortfalls as a result of COVID-19.
Mhm.
Just, well, that's operational shortfalls. So I'm wondering if you have continued operational shortfalls, given that you say we're doing well right now.
Right. Actually, it should be, I think, broader than that, in my opinion. Those who have been impacted really need some assistance to kind of dig themselves out of the hole that was artificially created for them. That's where we are.
Right. So we've had some correspondence that says, as you said, you put money up personally, and we've had some that they had to forego their child's 529 plan or savings for retirement, and they want to be compensated for that, to bring them forward. The bill goes further on to say that that your operating costs should threaten the capacity of the business to weather financial hardships and result in general financial insecurity due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And I guess, when this program started, it was really focused on helping businesses survive. It sounds like people are saying, well, we have survived, but we want to be made whole or partially whole for past losses.
And I mean, there's a trickle down effect. We have vendors who have been waiting, a long time to get paid, and we've been able to work with them. They've been very patient, but if we can pay them off, then a lot of them have been in the same boat where they've had to lay off their employees or cut back operations, which affects the supply chain, which then drives prices up. So there's a whole ecosystem here that getting the adequate level of funding to companies like ours, I think will help to improve the general conditions for business in the state overall. So, and that's why I say, it's not just a matter of trying to get any kind of personal compensation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just positioning our business to be able to survive, grow, and thrive into the future. So, does that make sense?
Well, it does, to the extent that giving out these loans works that way. You just need some language to make sure that's where the money goes.
Right. And I think, in my experience working with Vita, they're great judges, as far as they've got the financial analysis capability to look at any business model and any situation and make good decisions on where that money can be best allocated. So that's why I do advocate for, don't handcuff them through language and legislation. Just let them operate and do what they do best.
So you're suggesting that they be given essentially, other than maybe a cap, carte blanche deciding who needs the money the most?
I mean,
if right now, an applicant can come in and say, I'm eligible under this, and I'm here, and I'm eligible, even though their needs might not be as great as your needs, and
sure,
to be funded. So you're talking about that kind of discretion?
Good question. I mean, I would say yes, but then I haven't really thought through everything for sure. But, I think just making sure that you don't limit it to like what happened with the bridge grants, where there were maybe 6 or 8 different categories of fixed expenses that were allowed. And a couple of them were actually overlapping, related to, internet expense, your cable bill and whatnot, and based on. Go ahead.
Where we're opening up all expenses.
Right. We're
right.
Expenses and Cassie has suggested we get rid of fixed expenses. We've heard that. I guess to go, I think Cassie feels there are enough guardrails so that we're not going to be I mean, I thought Cassie's testimony yesterday was very good, but she has asked, and I hear you saying you want a no date because, no date, that we want to focus on operating expenses, that you want,
Right.
you'd rather have our compromise come out of 250. I mean, you'd love to have 500 as a cap,
Sure.
but 250 is better than 150, and the
Yes.
6 months is better, more reflective of the loss. Of the loss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And putting in, little restrictions, like for example, the 2020 date restriction is precisely why companies like ours fell through the cracks in other programs.
I'm interested in understanding better, help me understand the operational costs of 6 months as being a cap. What kind of margin do you work on in terms of your receipt revenue versus your profit margin?
It depends on what cost center we're looking at. I think if for beer, for example, I think we do about a 20% cost of goods, maybe 25 in some cases. Some IPAs go a little higher, into 33%. Food costs have gone up. They were averaging 32% before the pandemic, and they've skyrocketed to an average nationwide of 42%. We've been able to keep it within 42%, sometimes dipping into the low to mid 30s. But it's unusual because there's been a lot of increased expenses for the cost of food costs. The distributors have had to increase their costs because of lack of supply, high demand. So I think profitability wise, we're able to manage it and keep it in check to a degree, but we do have the cost of malt has just gone up the last 2 months. We've seen 2 increases. So now the profitability of that 20 to 25% is now, the cost of goods is now inching closer to 30, 35% on average. In some cases, a lot higher depending on what you're producing. For spirits, same thing. It's a pretty high cost of goods when you take into consideration the malt or the base sugar, and then the process and the time involved to create that, the labeling, the packaging. So yeah, that gets over 50%.
I guess I was more interested overall in terms of what is your costs, overall fixed and operational costs versus revenue. I guess I can
see.
What is all your enterprises together, what is your total operation of fixed costs?
Right. So gotcha. So in the program last year, when we applied, I think our monthly fixed costs that were allowed under the grant program was $27,000 a month.
Right. And
so if we'd added in operational costs, that would have been probably 10 times that. It comes out to, I don't have the, let me just do a quick calculation. So
10 times 27,000 a month is like 200.
So we're probably looking at $150,000 a month in overall cost structure. And so the fixed cost was 27,000. So that's 27 divided by about 18% is the fixed cost of the overall cost.
So the total per year for fixed and operational costs would be roughly what?
I'm sorry, say again?
Total operational fixed costs for a whole year would be
times
what?
12.
Times 12. So about 324,000, between 320 and 350.
No.
For the full year.
No, I thought
that
that doesn't make sense. I thought you said it was, are you saying those are a cost per month or per year?
Well, you asked about the fixed cost, and we had estimated 27,000 per month for fixed cost. Per month for fixed cost.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that adds up quite a bit. I mean, the 20.
Yeah, 324 for the year.
Well, that's $324,000 right there, plus 150 a month of operating costs.
So we're looking at like $2 million.
Yeah, we approached 2 million. I think.
2 million.
Okay,
yeah, last year I think we were at 1.85, 1.9 in that range.
So 6 months, if that's the cap on your business, went from six, if we go to 3 months to 6 months,
Mhm.
500,000 as a cap versus $1 million as a cap based upon that factor.
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
That was very helpful.
Incredibly articulate.
Great. Thank you.
And you're making us hungry and thirsty.
Well, just let me know anytime you want to come. I'll give you the full tour. I love giving tours, showing off the place.
So I have one personal question on that. I thought I went to your opening and it was in that small shopping center across from IBM, not in the.
Oh, okay. I think you're thinking First Republic. They're in Essex as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Black Flannel.
You're in the mall with all the shops, Lang Farm. That's where-
Correct. Yeah. If you come out of Hannaford and look straight, you'll see Black Flannel. We're at the other end of the same set of buildings as the Essex Cinemas.
Right. Okay.
And I mean, you should see what's going on there in general. The growth and the companies that the whole complex has been reimagined to experience-based destinations. There's a wine bar and restaurant now. New restaurants opening up April 1st called Bramble. We have an art gallery. We have Whole Food store. We have just a lot of different interesting local operators there now, and so a lot of eyes around the country are on this development because they're these kinds of plazas have been going out across the country, and they're looking at us as a potential blueprint for redeveloping their centers and renewed development in those in areas which are kind of in decline. So
Yeah, I was just on the phone this morning with Teresa Davis, who's working on Barbarossa, which is an experiential art installation in the same
Very
place,
exciting.
tied to other places not in Chittenden County, to create a regional destination art experience. And there's all kinds of music and events over the summer. It's really been a huge success story, revitalizing our whole region.
Yeah, well, Black Flannel has become a community hub, and all the different stores and the plaza in general has become a community hub with the live music. And they have a green with a barn stage that we have larger events happening there. Our Oktoberfest last fall. We have another one coming this year. Our second anniversary celebration will be there in July. And we had 800 people come through for Oktoberfest last year. So that was nice.
I guess I have one question, which I don't know if you're prepared to answer it, but if you got a $250,000 grant, you have off the top of your head, what you would do with it?
Sorry, say again.
I said, if you got a $250,000 grant, off the top of your head, what you would immediately do with that money?
Probably pay off some of the vendors and the debt that we owe, that we've accumulated. Like I said, mentioned we're heading toward operational stability, or we're at that now. So we're not too worried about that at the moment, unless again, as of course, something else happens, like another COVID variant. But
Do you have loans outstanding?
oh yeah, we still have significant, most of the principal loans, because the first 9 to 12 months, Vita and VFCU both allowed us to do. They extended the interest only period. And they've been really good about working with us for that. So helping in our cash flow expense structure has been good. But we started paying both principal and interest last year, and have been able to keep up with that. But it's it's still a challenge though, trying to get some of that other debt that we've accumulated that we need to really pay off those vendors. Sooner than later would be great. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a 10-minute break to 20 to